But the fact that the ratings from Caitlin Clark's series to these series fell off a cliff, it should surprise no one.
I'm watching the Indiana Fever game. I'm just waiting on Caitlin Clark to catch the basketball.
The lack of viewers after Caitlin Clark's playoff exit has driven AJ Wilson insane.
I'm going to go out there and I'm going to try to be the best. I get y'all saying best player in the world. That's great. It looks great. But I want to be the best person. I want to be the best teammate.
She went for an interview and said, "This year, more than any other, I've heard people call my game boring." Wilson has gone wild with the lack of viewers since Caitlin Clark's elimination from the playoffs. When the Fever was eradicated, nobody cared about the playoffs, which is precisely what AA Wilson would prefer: more freedom to play the game without people bugging her too much.
Let's just say the ratings aren't the same with Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever now eliminated. Game 1 of the Aces Liberty matchup on Sunday drew an average of 929,000 viewers. Was down nearly 50% from last Sunday's Fever Sun contest. By the way, not only was viewership down,
because of Caitlin Clark's influence, viewership has decreased for every game while she watched everything unfold from home. I imagine she'll be chuckling at this mess because they could have had the most watched playoff final, but no.
All I gotta say is she's lucky this UConn team isn't healthy. And that's a true statement.
that's wrong, Molly.
Monica,
That's wrong, Molly. Molly,
like
it's
five
excuses.
top players,
It's
am I
excuses,
right?
Molly. It's
Major
excuses.
injuries.
You would not be saying that if it wasn't UConn.
Major stars not playing.
Listen, excuse
Gotta
me,
go.
it's her against Caitlin Clark.
Stephen A.
Ain't no excuses.
Stephen
You
A.
got there.
Wait a
Don't
minute.
want to hear that now.
Stephen A.
Let me tell you, if
Paige
Georgetown get
Beckers-
back in the mix, I'm going to be insufferable. I'm just telling you that now.
What?
If Paige Beckers didn't basically miss 2 seasons, I don't know if we'd be talking
Come on
about
now.
Caitlin Clark the way we are now.
The New York versus Minnesota Lynx final is coming up, and I can't even identify a single player on either team. This game is expected to draw the lowest crowd of any playoff game thus far. How can the WNBA allow this to occur?
There's a reason 12 million people are watching ESPN
Yeah.
for a game. If that game was on CBS, they probably would have had 25, 30 million people watching that game.
The WNBA is lost without Caitlin Clark, and it's evident that they truly tried to reject the Caitlin effect and claimed it didn't exist. However, as each second passes without Caitlin, they are coming to terms with the fact that the WNBA is once again unwatchable.
And it looks like we're not going to be seeing Caitlin Clark play basketball again for another 200 days. An ESPN reporter said at the end of the Indiana Fever Connecticut Sun Game 2 that Caitlin Clark almost definitely will not be playing basketball this offseason. So no overseas and no 3-on-3 unrivaled.
Throughout the WNBA season, AA Wilson and the Las Vegas AC have been a dominant force. The team entered the playoffs as one of the top contenders, and with AA at the helm, many expected the Aces to make it to the finals. However, the semifinal matchup against the New York Liberty did not go as planned. The Liberty, led by their own set of star players, delivered a strong performance and managed to knock out the Aces, sending shockwaves through the WNBA community. The elimination of the Las Vegas Aces not only ended the team's hopes for a championship, but it also took one of the most well-known players in the league out of the spotlight, which contributed to the general decline in playoff excitement.
Caitlin Clark's the most valuable, most important person in the WNBA this year, and should have been unanimous Rookie of the Year.
Expectations that the MVP would lead their team deep into the playoffs, possibly all the way to a championship when AIA is awarded, are common among fans and experts. When Wilson and the Aces were eliminated, it not only hurt the team's prospects, but also removed a major storyline for the postseason. Wilson wasn't even going to get the opportunity to play for the championship. She was meant to be the player that everyone watched in the finals.
Being disrespectful, but they talked a lot of trash and they got humbled. And I think that that's okay. That is sports. That is what we live for in sport.
The excitement that usually accompanies WNBA playoff games seemed to vanish without Caitlin Clark. The games felt less intense, less thrilling, and frankly less enjoyable for many fans. Clark is a player who commands attention. Her style of play is captivating, and her ability to take control of a game makes her one of the most exciting athletes to watch in the WNBA. However, the playoffs lost a significant amount of their appeal when the Indiana Fever, led by Clark, were eliminated from the postseason by the Connecticut Sun.
And to act like there isn't or hasn't been legitimate resentment emanating from those who are pioneers. Nobody's fooled here. You got pundits who used to play in the WNBA, some of them who didn't, and who was speaking on behalf of those who didn't want to create that kind of noise themselves because of the negative impact. We talk about it when the men do it. If we detect jealousy, if we detect envy, if we detect resentment, and it's amongst the fellas, we put it out there. Shit, we act like it's the latest episode of General Hospital. But when the ladies are feeling that way about another young lady like Caitlin Clark, and people like myself and Shay Shay call it out, suddenly it's a problem.
When a player like Caitlin Clark isn't there for the playoffs, it's like losing a complete experience instead of just one person. When Clark was eliminated, the magic vanished, and all that was left was a WNBA playoffs that felt uninteresting and flat. This was a huge blow since Clark has a special combination of skill and charisma that draws in people regardless of whether they are diehard basketball fans or casual viewers. The playoffs are meant to be the highlight of the season, when the top players perform and spectators are hooked to their TVs. But without Clark, many fans called the playoffs a misery and a disaster.
Ever since, Angel Reese had that injury, to me, and also coming off of Olympic break, Caitlin Clark separated herself. Yeah. She should have been unanimous. Now to celebrate her, one thing that people forget is as a rookie, she was the most blitzed player in the WNBA, and she still put up 19, 5, and 8 assists.
The numbers don't lie. Once Clark was eliminated from the competition, viewership fell precipitously. The decline wasn't gradual. Rather, it was abrupt and immediate, demonstrating just how much of a draw Clark is for the league. The WNBA, like any professional sports league, depends heavily on viewership for its success. Following Clark's departure, the WNBA saw one of the biggest drops in viewership in its history. Television ratings are important since they determine sponsorships, advertising contracts, and even broadcasting rights. If viewership declines, the league's chances to develop and broaden its audience are also diminished. For many supporters, the sharp drop in viewership that followed Clark's removal is evidence of how crucial she is to the league's overall success. The way Caitlin Clark performed during the playoffs was a major factor in their excitement. After she left the game, fans weren't as interested in watching teams without Clark, which was reflected in the viewership figures. Her ability to dominate a game and make great plays that leave fans in awe was a major factor in why people were turning in.
Should your scenario take place, Jason, and it steadily declines, I wonder, this actually needs to be studied. What other sports league has diminishing ratings as you get closer to the championship? That would actually embolden the argument that there's a certain guard that now plays in Indiana truly should be the logo of that.
One cannot stress the significance of this deterioration. The WNBA had been seeing a steady rise in popularity as more people tuned in to watch the games, but those numbers plummeted dramatically in the absence of Caitlin Clark, a decline that might have long-term repercussions. While there are many things that might lead to a loss in viewership, it is evident that Caitlin Clark's absence was the main cause of the sharp decline in numbers if the league couldn't figure out a method to keep people interested without depending only on its top players. Without Clark, the WNBA playoffs would have lost a sizable portion of their viewership. Clark is not just a player. She is a phenomenon whose ability to captivate viewers is unmatched. It's crucial to realize the extent of Clark's influence on viewership because when she plays, fans are captivated by her amazing skills, viewers respond to her leadership and unquestionable presence because she has a way of making every game feel significant, whether it's through her ability to score points or her clutch performances at crucial junctures. Clark offers an element to the game that is difficult for other players to match.
Pretty impressive for Caitlin to win Rookie of the Year in a dominant fashion when it is going to be one of the great rookie classes in the history of the league.
The admirers who had been watching Clark's journey vanished when she was removed. Although talented, other players didn't have the same star power to keep people interested during the playoffs, so there was suddenly no reason to stay watching. The WNBA is a league that depends on its stars, and Caitlin Clark is one of the biggest. Without her, their viewership in the playoffs was significantly reduced.
The Fever on a great season. I don't think anybody expected them to make the playoffs after starting 1-8. They had a tremendous second half of the season. That Olympic break was much needed. But Caitlin Clark, she just completely changed around the WNBA culture, and she completely changed around the Indiana Fever's culture for the future. And the future is bright for the Indiana Fever. And I'm so happy that, Caitlin Clark came into the WNBA light, and fans get to actually watch her and see what she...
Caitlin Clark, she has completely transformed the culture of the WNBA and the Indiana Fever for the better. The future is bright for the Indiana Fever, and I'm thrilled that Caitlin Clark has emerged into the spotlight so that fans can witness her in action and learn what she, in addition to being one of the WNBA's greatest players, Caitlin Clark is also the league's spokesperson. Her ability to captivate audiences is unrivaled, and she has taken center stage in the league's attempts to increase the number of people who think of the WNBA. When fans think of professional basketball players, they frequently think of Caitlin Clark, and for good reason. Her play style is what draws them in. She plays with a flair and intensity that is uncommon in the league, whether it's through her daring drives to the basket, her deep three-pointers, or her flashy assists. Because of Clark's ability to keep spectators interested and her presence on the court, every game feels like an event that shouldn't be missed.
This league is insane, and that's why I have mixed feelings. I'm going to miss Caitlin Clark. Hopefully I don't see her on the basketball court again until April, until next WNBA season, but I'm so glad I don't have to watch the rest of this. I've been so turned off by most of these players in the WNBA. It's incredible.
This game marked the turning point, the moment when everything changed. Up until that point, the playoffs had been drawing in a solid number of viewers, but after Clark's team was knocked out, the numbers began to fall rapidly for fans. The loss of the Indiana Fever wasn't just about one team being eliminated. It was about losing the chance to see Caitlin Clark continue her playoff journey. The Indiana Fever, led by Caitlin Clark, were eliminated from the playoffs by the Connecticut Sun. When the Fever subsided, fans' main motive for watching the playoffs had vanished, and Clark had been the main draw. Her performances had been the season's high point.
Basketball has really consumed my life for a year, so I feel like it'll be good for me to kind of reflect back on everything that's happened. Like, I feel like I didn't even have time to really reflect on my college career because it ended so fast. I feel like taking some time to myself and really enjoying that and reflecting back.
There was never a lower audience after this game. The WNBA was seeing some of its best ratings during the playoffs, but when Clark was injured, the numbers fell precipitously. Viewers were just less interested in watching the remaining games without Clark, which was a stark reminder of how much the league depends on its top players to keep fans interested. The WNBA's viewership figures demonstrated the difficulty of that task. The elimination of Caitlin Clark and Aya Wilson had a devastating effect on the league's viewership. The league lost half of its audience after these two stars were eliminated, an unprecedented drop that highlights how important these players are to the league's success. The WNBA had been building momentum throughout the season with more fans tuning in to watch the games, but with Caitlin Clark's elimination, that momentum came to a screeching halt.
This went from being one of the most loved teams in the WNBA to being riddled with so much drama this season. A'ja Wilson was under fire last week for the privileged comment that she made to Kelsey Plum. And Coach Becky Hammon was under fire for basically saying that her team was too busy being celebrities and they were distracted and that's why they're not winning games. The list goes on and on. If you're this Aces team, you really need to regroup and maybe make some tough decisions about the future of this team.
The WNBA Finals are typically the most anticipated games of the year. Fans watch to see which team will play for the championship, and the league expects its highest attendance during this time. However, with stars like Caitlin Clark out of the running, this year's final is likely to be one of the least watched in WNBA history. Fans are just not as excited about the finals. The WNBA was hoping for a blockbuster showdown, but it now has to deal with the fact that the championship game will probably draw very few viewers. This is a serious problem because the absence of these important players has made the season finale for the WNBA rather dull than exciting. Without Caitlin, there isn't the same enthusiasm among fans, and the final is supposed to be the biggest game of the season and the one that draws the most attention. As a result, television numbers are predicted to be the lowest the league has seen in years.
You guys were right. That's what we're saying. You
No,
were right.
Molly, you did not say that, Molly. No,
saying
no,
it.
no.
That is
what you said.
You
That
did
is
not.
what you
That's
said.
not what you said, Molly.
What are you guys
That is not what you
talking?
said.
In her little time in the WNBA, Caitlin Clark has accomplished more for the league than many players have in their whole careers. She has revolutionized the league, drawing in new supporters, grabbing media attention and electrifying it in a way that few others have. Despite her enormous contributions, Caitlin Clark hasn't always been treated fairly. Fans have been critical of her, and referees have made dubious calls that have affected her performances. For a player who has done so much for the league, it's disappointing to see her treated this way. Clark's ability to draw in viewers, her incredible performances, and her competitive spirit have made her the face of the WNBA. The WNBA must value her and see to it that she is shown the deference she merits.
She's got the wrong skill set to handle the physicality of that league. And she's a rookie, targeted by society, targeted by her looks, targeted by her reputation.
Even though Caitlin Clark is currently out of the playoffs, fans are already excitedly anticipating her return for the upcoming season. The WNBA is aware that when she returns, viewership will increase once more. Although fans are eager to see Caitlin Clark return to the court, her absence has left a big hole in the league. The WNBA needs Clark, and her return next season will be one of the most anticipated events in the league's history. Fans can't wait to see her back in action, leading her team and making incredible plays. More videos are now visible if you liked them, and subscribe.